resources, spur regional collaboration, and support economic recovery and job creation in these high-growth industries. I urge my colleagues to support this very straightforward, simple amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from Virginia.
This costs no money. We have no objection to the amendment. Accept the amendment.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Thank you.
The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Rhode Island, and those in favor will signify by saying aye. Opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. Clerk will read.
Page 6, line 4, salaries and expenses, $37,500,000.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana seek recognition?
Madam Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Scalise of Louisiana, page 6, line 7, after the dollar amount, insert reduced by $7,500,000. Page 17, line 6, after the dollar amount, insert reduced by $10,706,000. Page 101, line 10, after the dollar amount, insert increased by $18,206,000.
Gentleman from Louisiana, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The amendment that I bring to the desk brings the two agencies, EDA and Commerce, back to the pre-2008 spending levels. And as we're focusing on bringing overall spending in this bill, the CGS bill, to pre-2008 levels, I wanted to also bring those two agencies in line on their overhead. And that's specifically what my amendment deals with. I want to first applaud the chairman, the gentleman from Virginia, for the work that he and his committee have done to start the process of reducing spending. We recognize that Washington has a spending problem, and some of us here are willing to do something about it and start forcing Washington to live within its means. And that means we have to start the process of setting priorities. One of the things that was done in the original CGS bill that's been filed is to implement a 52% cut to the programs that are implemented, for example, in EDA. And again, I applaud the gentleman for making those improvements and those reforms in the base of the bill to actually bring the spending in those programs in line with pre-2008 levels. But one thing that was not done was the spending for the salaries and expenses, the overhead of those agencies. So as the agencies are being trimmed back, their salaries and overheads are not being subsequently trimmed back. And so that's what we do in this amendment. We actually reduce spending to the point where we will save $18.2 million that will reduce the federal deficit. Again, this is one small step in a large number of steps that we need to take as a body. But I want to talk a little bit about what these cuts will mean and what the subsequent corresponding cuts will mean to the cuts that have already been made in the programs themselves. I think there have been some good examples that have been shown of these programs, what EDA does, and some of the money that's wasted. And when you go and you look through what these agencies have spent money on, again, this is money we don't have. They've spent money on things like building a replica of the Great Pyramids, building a replica of the Great Wall of China. $2 million was spent giving money that we don't have to a city to build an amphitheater with a wine tasting room. I'm sure there are a lot of people in that amphitheater would like going to a wine tasting room, but there are a lot of places you can go in the private sector that already do that without borrowing money from China to go and build these things that with money we don't have. And so again, as the committee did the work of cutting 52% of the EDA program, they did make some cuts in the overhead, but not to bring it to the 2008 levels. So as the bill currently stands in its base form, these agencies, these two agencies, will see a 25% increase in their overhead from the 2008 budget. So in that 4-year period, even with the cuts that have already been made, these two agencies still have a 25% increase in their spending. Now keep in mind, this is coming at a time when states, when local governments, when families in our districts back home have been cutting back, have actually been making do with less to live within their means, as everyone should when times get tough. And yet in Washington, even though 42 cents of every dollar that's spent here is borrowed money, Washington still hasn't cut back subsequently to live within its means. And we've got to start that process. And that means setting priorities. These agencies would still have combined $74 million to spend on their overhead. But at least it brings them back to their 2008 levels, just as the programs that they're administering have been brought back to 2008 levels. So think about it. If my amendment were not to pass, we're asking people to do more with less. If my amendment doesn't pass, they would be asked to do less with more. The programs that they administer are being cut, and yet the salaries and overhead are not being cut subsequently. And, we just had a district work period this last week, and I go back home and I talk to small businesses throughout my district in southeast Louisiana. And what they tell me, the things that are holding them back from creating jobs are the regulations, the red tape, and the excessive spending coming out of Washington. And yet if you look at this, nobody in my district said that they need to see the Great Wall of China being built with taxpayer money. But what they do say is what's holding them back from creating jobs is borrowing money from China to spend on programs that we just can't afford to fund. And so while I applaud the cutting of those programs, because the programs in the base of this bill have been cut, what hasn't been cut subsequently is the overhead to go along with it, to bring it to those pre-2008 levels. This is a step we need to take to not only save $18.2 million that will reduce the deficit, but to start sending the signal that we're living within our means. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Yes, I rise to oppose the amendment.
And the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. My colleague mentioned small businesses. It brings to mind that in today's financial times, it shows that we have the highest enthusiasm for hiring and economic optimism in the small business community that we've had in this country since a very long time. And over $70 billion was made available through the Obama administration for small business loans through 2009 and 2010. And we now see the results of it. We see millions of private sector jobs being created. Our economy is seeing a decrease over the 11 months from an unemployment rate of 9.1% to now 8.1%, and most economists agree it's going to drop into the 7% number over the next few months. This notion that we can cut program and therefore we should cut administration sounds like a lot of common sense. But when you think about it, whether one member comes over to the floor to speak today or 100 members, we still have to have staff on the floor. There's still security. There's still lights. There are still expenses in an agency when you have to run any part of the program. So if you have to run a loan program, if you have to run other programs, you need the expertise and the staff to do it. Whether you cut the program back a little bit, it's like a classroom in a school. Unless you're going to eliminate an entire classroom, you need to hire the teacher. You need to have the lights on. So I would just suggest that even though the gentleman may be focused on trying to do something he says about the deficit, that in reality, unless he's actually trying to cripple the Commerce Department as it competes with much larger countries like China and India, economic competitors like the European Union, trying to work on behalf of American businesses, our Commerce Department, we cannot afford to be cutting back and cutting in a way that actually does harm to our economy. So I rise in opposition to this amendment.
Gentleman yields back his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Louisiana, and those in favor will signify by saying aye. Opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chairs, the noes have it, and the amendment is not agreed to. The gentleman from Louisiana.
Madam Chair, I would ask for the yeas and nays.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Louisiana will be postponed. Clerk will read.
Page 6, line 12, Minority Business Development Agency, Minority Business Development, $28,689,000. Economic
For what purpose does the gentlelady from New York seek recognition?
To speak on behalf of my amendment, Madam Chair.
Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Ms. Clark of New York, page 6, line 18. After the dollar amount, insert increased by $5,311,000. Page 11, line 11. After the dollar amount, insert reduced by $5,311,000.
Gentlelady from New York is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I rise today in support of additional funding for the Minority Business Development Agency. An offset for this amendment is by $5.3 million from the $79 million increase to the National Institute for Standards and Technology. Madam Chair, minority firms currently provide 5.8 million people with employment, and we know that they have the untapped potential to create even more. That's why, Madam Chair, Ms. Chu of California, Mr. Cohen of Tennessee, who are co-sponsors of this amendment, and myself, along with 33 of our colleagues, sent a letter to the CJS subcommittee in March seeking MBDA funding levels at $34 million. In direct response to the then-planned closure of the MBDA regional offices and to expand MBDA's network of business centers. In 2010, MBDA secured $1.6 billion in contracts and $2.2 billion in financing for minority firms. That same year, they realized a 125% return on their investment. Our nation's economy will not and cannot fully recover until all small businesses are active participants in a robust recovery. The MBDA's mission of supporting minority businesses is absolutely fundamental to the overall recovery of the economy. Madam Chair, I yield to my colleague, Mr. Cohen, at this time.
Gentleman from Tennessee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank my colleague from New York for yielding the time. This is a particularly important amendment because minority business development agencies give people a hand up, not a handout. The fact is the folks on the other side are always talking about opportunity and businesses and small business. And this is the ideal type of federal government program where small business, minorities are given opportunity to get knowledge about contracting opportunities with the federal government and get a share and get financing capabilities. Minorities have long been denied the opportunity to get adequate financing from our banking system and have been less than properly represented in the amount of contracts they get from the federal government. The Minority Business Development Agency just put an office in my district in Memphis, Tennessee, the largest metropolitan population, African-American population in this country, and yet it wasn't until this year that a minority business office was placed there, the first one in the history of the state of Tennessee. There's a lot more that needs to be done to give people an opportunity. And in this recession, small business has been hurt and minorities have been hurt in a disproportionate manner. With this amendment, the Minority Business Development Agency can thrive and give people opportunity, give people jobs, give people contracts, and make economic development go throughout all of America. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, the Clark-Cohen-Chu amendment, and to have a hand up, not a handout. Thank you, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
I rise in opposition to the gentlelady's increase, and I rise in opposition to this amendment. The bill already funds the Minority Business Development Agency at the level requested by the administration at nearly $29 million. The administration has not asked for more money, and also the offset would not be good. It would cut the scientific research activities at NIST that are vital to increasing our competitiveness, giving an edge to American manufacturing, and also doing a lot of work in the area of cyber. Funding the sciences and research programs has been a top priority of both political parties. So I urge my colleagues to reject this increase and to vote down the amendment and yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
I rise in support of the amendment. Now,
the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
That this amendment in all likelihood is not going to pass in the House today. The chairman is correct that the appropriations request from the administration was fully met in the bill. But I do want to associate myself with the remarks of the gentlelady from New York. I share a birthday with Dick Durbin, the majority leader in the Senate, and with the gentlelady from New York. We all happen to be born on the same day. And but she is, at least between me and Durbin, she is the best among us. So, but this effort to increase our focus on underserved communities, I think, is an important one, and that's why I'm happy that she, along with the gentleman from Tennessee, have brought this amendment forward, because I think that in order to increase economic opportunity in our country, we need to be focused in this agency, not so much in whether we save an office here or there, but that we need to put increased focus on loans and technical assistance and contracting opportunities for businesses that have been left out. I know the chairman agrees with me in this regard. We need to continue to look for ways to increase the opportunities for this agency to serve these communities. Thank you very much.
The gentleman yields back his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from New York, and those in favor will signify by saying aye. Opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chairs, the noes have it, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. Clerk will read.
Page 6, line 19, Economic and Statistical Analysis, Salaries and Expenses. $96 million to remain available until September 30th, 2014. Bureau of the Census, Salaries and Expenses, $253,336,000. Periodic censuses and programs, $625,357,000 to remain available until September 30th, 2014.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts seek recognition?
Madam Chair, I believe I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment number 4, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Lynch of Massachusetts.
The gentleman from Massachusetts recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, I rise to offer an amendment to H.R. 5326, making appropriations for the Departments of Commerce, Justice, Science, and related agencies bill. My amendment would increase by $4 million the amount appropriated for fiscal year 2013 for the Office of Justice Drug Court Program. The $4 million added to the Drug Courts Program will be offset by a decreasing amount by $4 million in the funding for periodic census and programs, related programs. To say that there is a drug addiction problem in the United States is an understatement. We're dealing with an epidemic that is in every city and town in this country and reaches across every demographic. Addiction does not discriminate as it shatters lives, breaks up families, and costs hundreds of billions of dollars annually. In fact, according to the National Institute of Drug Abuse, estimates of the total overall costs related to substance abuse in the United States, including productivity, health, and crime-related costs, exceed $600 billion annually. Drug courts are specialized court dockets designed to handle cases involving drug and/or alcohol-dependent offenders, commonly charged with offenses such as possession of a controlled substance or other nonviolent offenses determined to have been caused or influenced by their addiction. These cases are handled through a comprehensive program of supervisors, drug testing, treatment services, and immediate sanctions and incentives designed to reduce the recidivism rates of these particular offenders. People who don't comply with the requirements of drug court go to jail. They go to jail quickly and for various periods of time. It's a get-tough policy. Particular offenders have recidivism rates reduced by helping them overcome their substance abuse problem, which are the primary and predicate cause of their criminal activities. Drug courts coordinate the efforts of judiciary, prosecution, defense bar, probation, law enforcement, treatment, mental health, social services, and child protection services to break the cycle of substance abuse, addiction, and crime. If we can break that cycle, we will all benefit, and drug courts work. Drug courts save money, they reduce crime, and they restore families. According to the National Association of Drug Court Professionals, the drug court approach reduces crime by as much as 45% more than other sentencing options. In fact, nationally, 75% of drug courts graduates remain arrest-free at least 2 years after leaving the program, and reductions in crime by those offenders is long-term. In addition to reducing crime, drug courts save money, and that is a theme that has become very popular around here lately. As reported by the National Association of Drug Court Professionals, nationwide, for every dollar invested in drug courts, taxpayers save as much as $27. This substantial savings comes from avoided criminal costs, prison costs, and reduced victimization and healthcare utilization, all areas in which vast sums of money are spent. Most importantly, drug courts help restore and preserve families. According to statistics, family reunification rates for drug offenders are 50% higher for drug court participants. As people struggle through addiction, they lose a sense of themselves and become isolated from everyone they've known. Reuniting with their family can be the first step in returning to normalcy and becoming again a productive member of their community. The underlying bill provides $41 million in drug court funding, $6 million over the FY 2012 level. And for that, I'd like to thank Chairman Frank Wolf and Ranking Member Chakar Fatah. However, drug courts have been historically underfunded since 2001. So this $4 million increase would bring funding for the National Drug Court Program in line with its historical average of $45 million since 2001. I appreciate the good work of the census, and I believe that this modest offset can be accounted for in the coming years. But the work of the drug courts meets an immediate and critical need. I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Virginia.
I have no objection to the amendment. I think it's a good amendment. The committee has also been very supportive of these. Also, we have, based on the recommendation of Mr. Meehan, have broadened it now with regard to veterans, too. But I thank the gentleman who accepts the amendment. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
I rise also to say that I could support this amendment. I led the effort in the Pennsylvania legislature to create a drug courts in our state. I'm a big supporter, and I think that the chairman in the bill before us, we've already increased this account, but I think that the amendment as offered by my colleague is something that we would support. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Massachusetts, and those in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Clerk will read.
Page 7, line 15, National Telecommunications and Information Administration, salaries and expenses, $45,568,000 to remain available until September 30th, 2014. Public Telecommunications Facilities, Planning and Construction, for administration of prior year grants, recoveries and unobligated balances are available until their expiration. U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, salaries and expenses, $2,933,241,000. National Institute of Standards and Technology, Scientific and Technical Research and Services, $621,173,000. Industrial Technology Services, $149 million.
For what purposes, the gentleman from Arizona seek
Madam
recognition?
Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Quayle of Arizona. Page 11, line 18, after the dollar amount, insert reduced by $21 million. Page 11, line 20, after the dollar amount, insert reduced by $21 million. Page 101, line 10, after the dollar amount, insert increased by $21 million.
Gentleman from Arizona, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, this amendment would strike the new Advanced Manufacturing Technology Consortia, also called AMTEC, and apply the $21 million that was provided in the bill to the spending reduction account. This new program is intended to establish a public-private partnership initiative that would provide federal grants to identify and support research projects focused on long-term industrial needs. Now, we all recognize the importance of advanced manufacturing and the value of collaboration in innovation policy. My hometown of Phoenix has a strong high-tech base and great research universities. I also serve as chairman of the Subcommittee on Technology and Innovation, which has jurisdiction over NIST. Our committee has a long bipartisan record of support for NIST and its contributions. That being said, in the current budget environment, I simply do not believe it is appropriate to be establishing and funding a new program. Even without the new $21 million Advanced Manufacturing Technology Consortia, NIST budget is still nearly 8% higher than was provided last year. Now, Madam Chair, when you look at the amount of debt that we have accumulated over the course of many years, and you look at the budget process that we're going through right now, This AMTech was actually requested for the funding last time around when we were going through the appropriations process, and we rightfully did not fund this new program. There are already programs in place for manufacturing, and there's other places that we can go in the private sector to be able to deal with that in the research and developing new ways to be innovated in advanced manufacturing. It is not the time to be wasting another $21 million in spending that we don't have in order to put forth a new program. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Virginia.
I rise in opposition to the gentleman's
Gentleman is
amendment.
recognized for 5 minutes.
The amendment would cut $21 million we provided for NIST to establish an Advanced Manufacturing Technology Consortia, or AMTech. Revitalizing the manufacturing sector is important to a strong economy. I mean, is America going to make anything? Aren't we all tired of going into Walmart and seeing made in China, made in China, made in China, made in China? We have to begin to make things in this country. AMTech would be a competitive grants program designed to leverage existing or establish new industry-led consortia to develop roadmaps for key long-term industrial research needs and support research at universities and government labs. AMTech will address multiple components of the innovation cycle from discovery to commercialization to accelerate the pace of innovation through the various industrial sectors. These are precisely the type of programs that we need now to support American manufacturing and innovation, and NIST has a strong track record of proven success in supporting American manufacturing. Manufacturing should be the cornerstone of the economy, and this amendment would help stop it. You know, I'm going to digress for just a second. When this Congress, on 2 different occasions, was asked by the administration to do away with the so-called payroll tax, that cost this Congress $125 billion. By doing that, both sides of this Congress and the administration gave Jimmy Buffett a break and Warren Buffett a break, and they created no new jobs. We took $250 billion and literally threw it away and jeopardized the Social Security program. We jeopardized it. And they said they were going to pay for it by borrowing it from the general fund. The general fund is broke. This is manufacturing, and we need a manufacturer, and we need to create jobs in this country. So I know the gentleman, I think, has got a great record on the cutting, but this is not the place we want to do it, and I urge a no vote and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Pennsylvania.
I rise in opposition.
Gentleman
There's
is recognized for 5 minutes.
nothing more important in our country than the revival of manufacturing. Over the first decade of this century, we lost so many manufacturing jobs. But now, at the front edge of this recovery is manufacturing. So 370,000 new jobs. To take our federal laboratories, which we invest billions of dollars in. I visited Sandia and Los Alamos and the Fermi Lab and the Aragon Lab. We have tens of thousands of scientists and researchers there. This consortia program will allow them to work with local manufacturers and communities to help build our manufacturing base so that as we compete across the globe to build it here and sell it everywhere, that we have the manufacturing capabilities to do it. I think this is an amendment that's unwise. We have a budget that's built not on the agreement last year, but on the Ryan budget. We're operating within the 302B allocation. So for people to rise and say we don't have the money, no. This is the money that's been allocated by the majority Republican Congress to spend on behalf of moving our country forward. So we should have a debate about what's important. I think manufacturing is important. I hope that we will reject this amendment.
Gentleman yields back his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona, and those in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chairs, the noes have it. The noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. The gentleman from Arizona.
Madam Chair, I request the yeas and nays.
A recorded vote is requested. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona will be postponed. Clerk will read.
Page 11, line 23, construction of research facilities, $60 million. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Operations Research and Facilities, $2,968,371,000 to remain available until September 30th, 2014.
Gentleman, for what purpose is the gentleman from Massachusetts seek recognition? Maryland.
Madam Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 10, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Harris of Maryland.
Gentleman from Maryland, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. And first, I want to congratulate the committee for doing its work to help curb the rise in government spending. I rise to offer an amendment to provide level funding for NOAA's Climate Portal program, rather than the increase in the funding requested by the President and included in the bill as it currently stands. The Climate Portal program is actually a website run by NOAA. And in committee testimony, Dr. Lubchenco suggested that this was a science website. This is where you can share climate science information and make decisions. And, Madam Chairman, the request is a 56% increase in funding. Now, the only thing that's got a 56% increase over the last 4 years is the size of the federal deficit and the debt. That's the only thing that's increased. So my amendment merely reduces the level of funding to the current level. But I want to read, as you click on some of these topics, what the science is at this portal. I'm going to read from an article just published on the website on May 2nd. It talks about farming. The rain was as loud as pennies falling on the roof of the truck's cab. Later on in the paragraph, we'd been watching Johnson work in his field until the fat drops of rain sent us racing for cover. Next paragraph, the machine behind the tractor makes it easier than ever for him to roll the grass into submission, thousands of stalks pointing accusingly at the device that just pancaked them. Madam Chairman, that's not a scientific article. That's something I read to my children at bedtime. But this is what NOAA is advancing as a scientific website to share scientific information and asking for a 56% increase in their funding. My amendment's simple. Let's just level fund the website. Let's revert it to a truly scientific nature and come back next year if and when our finances are better. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. For what purpose is the gentleman from...
Yes, I think it's a good amendment, and I accept the amendment. Yield back.
From Virginia yields back. For what purpose is the gentleman from Washington rise?
I rise in opposition to the amendment. And
gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
It is our understanding that this affects climate change. Is that correct? And we think that we should not cut it. And I ask for a recorded vote.
First of all, the question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Massachusetts and those in favor, Maryland. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. The gentleman from
I ask for the yeas and nays.
A recorded vote is requested pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18 for the proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Maryland will be postponed. For what purpose is the gentlelady from Hawaii rise?
Madam Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Ms. Hanabusa of Hawaii. Page 13, line 2, after the dollar amount, insert increase by $1,600,000. Page 32, line 4, after the dollar amount, insert reduced by $1,900,000.
Gentlelady from Hawaii, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, I'd like to say that this is a bipartisan amendment. Congressman Young from Alaska has joined in the amendment, as well as Congresswoman Bordalio and Congressman Sablon. So, and I have another co-sponsor, the gentleman from Washington, Congressman Dix. So, Madam Speaker, this is a very important issue, and it's not asking for much in terms of funding. It's asking for funding to be restored to the fiscal year 12 level. And let's look at what we're talking about here. We're talking about the Marine Debris Line, which funds NOAA's Marine Debris Program, which really was established and mandated by the Marine Debris Research, Prevention, and Reduction Act of 2006. As you know, the program works to map, identify, assess, remove, and prohibit marine debris. Marine debris is, of course, the worst pollution that we're dealing with in our oceans, but it has become even more relevant to us after the tsunami, the earthquake, and, of course, Fukushima Daiichi in Japan on March 11, 2011. And we have, I'm sure, all sat there in amazement as reports have been made of a soccer ball being found, I believe, in Alaska and a motorcycle in Canada. Definitely the debris hitting North America. I represent Hawaii, and we are on watch as well. And all indications are is that debris is making its way. It'll hit the northern Hawaiian Islands maybe in the later part of this year, but definitely we expect that the coast will be hit by 2013, as well as Hawaii and other islands. And think about what this means. You're not talking about a ship. You're not talking about things being dropped in the ocean. You're talking about whole cities. I'm sure we can all recall seeing that in Japan, the tsunami coming in and wiping out cities. And think about where that went. I think the problem that many of us have is that we stand there in awe of what happens, but we don't think about what the consequences are. And the consequences here are major. That is floating in the ocean, and it is making its way to us. That is why this amendment has been proposed, and that is why I believe this amendment has the sponsors that it does have, because we are simply asking to be restored to the level of fiscal year 2012. What that will give us, remember at that point we were merely monitoring. We didn't have any clear evidence as to what was happening. Now we know. All this does is say restore it to at least that level so that the marine debris program can do its work and map, identify, assess, remove, and prohibit more marine debris from hitting our shores. Think about the consequences for us. Madam Speaker, that is why I ask that we all support this amendment, and on page 13, line 2, increase the amount by $1,600,000 just to the fiscal year 2012 level. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back her time. Question is on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Hawaii. Those in favor will signify by saying aye. Opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
Madam Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Grimm of New York, page 42, line 3. After the dollar amount, insert increased by $18 million. Page 42, line 12. After the dollar amount, insert increased by $18 million. Page 13, line 2. After the dollar amount, insert reduced by $18 million. Page 13, line 14. After the dollar amount, insert reduced by $18 million. Page 13, line 15. After the dollar amount, insert reduced by $18 million.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Objection.
I rise today to offer an amendment I introduced along with my colleagues, Mr. King from New York, Mr. Barletta, and Mr. Runyon, that would ensure funding is maintained for regional information sharing activities such as the Regional Information Sharing System, RIS, a program established by Congress over 30 years ago as a nationwide resource for law enforcement to share criminal and intelligence information. The House FY 2013 CJS Appropriations Bill requests $27 million in funding for this important program, a 40% reduction over past years. Our amendment would restore regional information sharing activities to the fiscal year 2011 funding level of $45 million. In the fiscal year 2013 Commerce, Justice, and Science Appropriations Act, it is fully offset by reducing funding for NOAA climate research.
RIS is a valuable tool that helps nearly 9,000 federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies in all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and U.S. territories. They share information more effectively in order to combat terrorism, dangerous criminals, gangs, and sex offenders. Since 2000, RIS support has yielded $942.5 million in narcotics, property, and case seizures alone, and 223% return on federal investment. This contributed to more than 57,360 arrests. These numbers don't lie. It's clear that regional information sharing more than pays for itself. These positive results have spurred a greater demand for RIS services. However, with RIS experiencing funding cuts in fiscal year 2012, agency needs could not always be met. With these additional cuts in fiscal year 2013, RIS will need to implement widespread layoffs and potentially dismantle critical intelligence centers. So in order to maximize the ability of law enforcement to combat crime and keep our communities safe, regional information sharing activities must remain adequately funded. I strongly urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Virginia.
I rise in opposition. I wish we could have worked something out. I visited the RIS Center up in Bucks County. My dad was a Philadelphia policeman. I take a back seat to no one on the issue of crime, but it doesn't cut the climate. I mean, we don't go down to that. What we're cutting basically is weather. We're cutting the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration research and facilities issue. The gentleman is proposing would cut funds for the National Weather Service and the satellite office that process all the data that we got with regard to weather, hurricanes, tornadoes, and you know, as we go on, no matter what the outcome of this amendment, we'll try, but it doesn't cut climate service. And also, this is the same level fiscal year as it was in 2012 level and the request. Some members come down, they want more cuts. Others want increase. This bill is below the President's numbers. It is below last year. It's a good program, but it's balancing out. So I would hope people would urge people to vote no, and as we go to conference, I'll tell the gentleman we'll work on it. But as of now, I urge a no vote. And if you vote yes, then the money's coming out of the weather. And if there's a hurricane, a tornado, a snowstorm, a problem, then you make your own judgment. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New York, and those in favor will signify by saying aye. Opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam Chair, request recorded vote.
New York. Recorded vote is requested, and pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, for the proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New York will be postponed. Clerk will read.
Page 14, line 3. In addition, for payments for the medical care of retired personnel and their dependents. Procurement, acquisition, and construction, $1,931,948,000 to remain available until September 30th, 2015, except funds provided for construction of facilities shall remain available until expended. Pacific Coastal Salmon Recovery, $65 million to remain available until September 30th, 2014.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise?
Madam Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
And the clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Brown of Georgia, page 15, line 13, after the dollar amount, insert reduced by $15 million. Page 101, line 10, after the dollar amount, insert increased by $15 million.
Gentleman from Georgia for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My amendment would reduce funding for the Pacific Coast Salmon Recovery Program to the President's FY13 request of $50 million. I love salmon. I love to eat them. I love to fish for them. I'm a conservationist, and conservation issues are what started my political activism. But We're also in an economic crisis as a nation. And let's be clear, this program is basically an earmark, and we should be eliminating it altogether. But that's not what my amendment does.
Will the gentleman yield?
No, sir. Sorry. I'm simply asking that we revert to funding levels back to those requested by the President. If $50 million in funding is good enough for the administration, that's exactly the amount of taxpayer money that this program should receive, and not a cent more. Given our current economic emergency, everyone needs to pull their weight when it comes to cutting spending. Congress has had to slash its own budget. Agencies across the federal government are tightening their belts left and right, and our nation's families are reining in spending to deal with our failing and flailing economy. But yet the Pacific Coast Salmon Recovery is requesting $65 million in their funding, a $15 million increase in their budget from what the President himself has recommended for this year. I urge my colleagues to support my amendment and to simply save American taxpayers $15 million by maintaining the status quo for the Pacific Coastal Salmon Recovery funding. And I'll yield back.
Gentleman from Georgia yields back his time. The gentleman from Washington.
I move to strike the requisite number of words.
And the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
First of all, I take umbrage at the use of the word earmark by my colleague. This is no earmark. This is a national program. This affects California, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, Alaska, and Idaho. And these states all are in the midst, after a whole series of endangered species listings that go coast-wide, are trying to save these salmon runs. And as someone who comes from Washington State, I have been in the midst of an effort to try to recover our salmon runs. We have marked our fish. We have gone to selective harvest. We're protecting our wild runs. We're trying to do everything we can to recover these salmon runs. Today on the Columbia River in Washington State, we will be very fortunate to get 600,000 salmon back. At a time in the 30s, we'd have 20 million fish coming back every year, wild Chinook salmon, and also coho salmon and others. So I think this is a very good program. We have worked hard to make sure the money is used for a strong habitat restoration work, that we have worked to improve our hatcheries. We've done hatchery reform. We've done everything we can to restore the habitat for these fish. And again, this is a national program that was created during the Clinton administration. It is strongly supported in the Pacific Northwest by both Democrats and Republicans. I see my good friend from Alaska, Mr. Young, has arrived on the floor. And I just want you to know that Alaska, where we still have many wild fish, also participates in this program from time to time. And so I urge that we vote no on this amendment. This is a national program. It has been in existence for 12 years. It is doing a good job, but we're fighting a very difficult problem. And we still need to keep working on this because of the endangered species listings, and we still have work to be done. And to cut this back, I think, is a mistake, and I urge my colleagues to vote no on the amendment.
Gentleman yields back his time. Question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Georgia, and those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. No. In opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The gentleman from Washington. I ask for a recorded vote. Recorded vote is requested and pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Georgia will be postponed. Clerk will read.
Page 16, line 8, Fishermen's Contingency Fund, for carrying out the provisions of Title IV of Public Law 95-372, not to exceed $350,000. Fisheries Finance Program account. Obligations of direct loans may not exceed $24 million for individual fishing quota loans and not to exceed $59 million for traditional direct loans authorized by the Merchant Marine Act of 1936. Departmental management salaries and expenses, $55 million. Office of Inspector General, $28,753,000. General Provisions, Department of Commerce. Section 101, appropriations funds made available to the Department by this Act shall be available for the activities specified in the Act of October 26, 1949. Section 102, appropriations made available to the Department shall be available for hire of passenger motor vehicles. Section 103, not to exceed 5% of any appropriation for the Department may be transferred between such appropriations, but no such appropriation shall be increased by more than 10%. Section 104, any costs incurred by a department resulting from personnel actions taken shall be absorbed within the total budgetary resources available to such department. Section 105, Section 105F of the Commerce, Justice, Science, and Related Agencies Appropriations Act 2012, Public Law 112-55, is amended. Section 106, the Secretary may furnish services necessary to support the operation, improvement of space that persons or organizations are authorized to use or occupy in the Herbert C. Hoover Building, Washington, D.C., or other buildings. Section 107, nothing in this title shall be construed to prevent a grant recipient from deterring child pornography or any other unlawful activity. Section 108, the Administrator of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is authorized to use with reimbursement and subject to the limits of available appropriations for purposes related to carrying out the responsibilities of any statute administered by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Section 109, the Department shall provide a monthly report to the committees of the House and the Senate on any official travel to China by any employee of the U.S. Department, including the purpose of such travel. This title may be cited as the Department of Commerce Appropriations Act 2013. Title II, Department of Justice, General Administration, Salaries and Expenses, $110,322,000.
For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina rise?
I have an amendment at the desk. It's Gowdy number 1.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 1, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Gowdy of South Carolina.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. For well over a year now, committees of Congress have been trying to answer basic fundamental questions about an ill-conceived, ill-executed firearms operation called Fast and Furious. A Border Patrol agent was killed, hundreds of Mexican citizens have been killed, thousands of weapons are unaccounted for and likely, Madam Chairwoman, to be used in future crimes. But the Department of Justice and the Attorney General specifically will not provide documents properly, legitimately requested. So I am left with no choice, Madam Chairwoman, but to offer an amendment cutting the Department of Justice appropriation. Madam Chairwoman, Congress has been patient, indeed too patient in my judgment. And I understand that for some, everything is a political exercise, but surely the Department of Justice can rise above petty partisan politics and comply with a subpoena. The Department of Justice, Madam Chairwoman, expects others to comply with subpoenas, yet they will not do so themselves. For those watching at home, what would happen to them if they ignored a summons for jury duty? What would happen to them if they ignored a grand jury subpoena? What would happen if a committee of Congress demanded documents and they summarily refused to cooperate? Madam Chairwoman, they would be sanctioned, fined, and probably jailed. The Department of Justice is not just one more agency within the federal government, and the Attorney General is not just one more political appointee put in place to advance one agenda or the other. Lady Justice, Madam Chairwoman, is blindfolded for a reason. She can see who's in front of her. She just chooses not to.
The Attorney General is the Chief Law Enforcement Officer for the United States, and that is a role that is far and beyond politics. Citizens must have confidence in the institutions of justice, and they must have confidence in the top law enforcement official in the country. And how can they possibly have either if the Department of Justice is withholding documents? Madam Chairwoman, it did not have to come to this. It should not have come to this, but there are basic questions the public and Congress have a right to have answered, such as, who in the Department of Justice approved the tactic of gun walking? Why was the criminal chief advocating for the tactic of gun walking on February the 4th, 2011 in Mexico, which is the very same day a demonstrably false letter was written to United States Senator Chuck Grassley denying the tactic? On the very same day Lanny Brewer's advocating for it, a letter's being sent under Department of Justice letterhead denying the tactic. How did such a demonstrably false letter ever get drafted and sent on DOJ letterhead? Was gun walking alluded to in the wiretapping applications, and if so, who missed it? When the President said he did not approve of Fast and Furious, and neither did Eric Holder, how did he know that? He said that in March of 2011. These are but 5 questions that we do not have the answer to despite 1 solid year of asking. So, Madam Chairwoman, this is not about politics to me. It's about respect for the rule of law. It's about answers. It's about accountability. It's about acceptance of responsibility. I will not, I cannot stand idly by while oversight of this body is ignored. It is time we did the jobs we swore allegiance to the Constitution to do, even if others will not. And with that, I would yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Virginia.
There's a number of words.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I rise in support of the gentleman's amendment. I have had a difficult time of getting answers out of the Justice Department. Many times before the Attorney General comes up, we have 6 or 7 letters there. And the night before the hearing, we get 1 letter that says, in answer to your letter of October 1st, October 15th, October 28th. And so I completely support it, and I urge members to support this thing, to send the message. I think it's important for the Justice Department to respond. Particularly, they are the Justice Department. And so I thank the gentleman for the amendment and urge its support. And yield
gentleman
back.
Yields back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania. Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
I rise in opposition to the amendment.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
But let me try to make a broader point here. We fund the Department of Justice to deal with crime and the protection of our country and our citizens. And the crime rate has went down each and every year of this administration. Violent crime is down. Homicides are down. The Department of Justice is intertwined and inextricable ways with the prevention of terrorist attacks on our homeland and on our citizens, and they've had an extraordinary record. Now, there may be occasions in the House for committees to do whatever it is that they need to do. I know there have been 7 hearings in which the Attorney General has testified. I know that thousands of pages of documents have been turned over. But the last thing that we should be doing is stripping away resources from a department whose responsibility through all of its agencies is to protect the people who've elected us. They have responsibility in terms of anti-terrorism. I was out at the opening of the Terrorist Screening Center in Virginia, and to see the various organizations under the mantle of the Department of Justice working hand in hand so to make sure that some 300+ Americans are safe. I think it's been an extraordinary job done by Attorney General Holder. I think that anyone in our country knows that this is a political matter and that what we need to do is to do our actual work here. And our work here is to deal with appropriations, to figure out what the resources are that the Department of Justice needs to do its work. And yes, there'll be a day for politics. That day's on the first Tuesday in November. Today is not the day for that. It's the day for this Congress to do its work. I oppose this amendment.
The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from South Carolina. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to.
Mr.
They'll come to you.
California. Does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
I'd like to yield time to the gentlelady who wants to offer an amendment, the gentlelady from California.
We're not there yet.
Either way, let's proceed.
The gentlewoman from
Thank you very
California
much. I have an amendment at the desk.
The reading has